I got a Wexter shirt. Let's go. Links in the description. Nozzles broken off in heat blocks, bubbles in resin prints, and tree supports that aren't actually supporting. All this and more, Print Fix Friday, episode 45. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to YouTube's longest running weekly Print Fail Fix series. If you like looking at fails and you like learning about how to fix them, make sure to leave a like and get subscribed. We do need your help. We're running out of fails, and it takes a lot of time to aggregate them. I would love your assistance. You can tag us on all the social medias, use the hashtag PrintFix. That way we can see these fails and we can include them in the video. Of course, give you the proper credit when it is due. We're going to be starting off with a nozzle that the individual claims is counter-threaded and broke off in their block. Spoiler alert, it's not counter-threaded. They thought it was. That's your problem. Next up, we move to tree supports and a model with interesting geometry that I don't think actually needs supports, with a very small modification, but we're going to talk about tree supports. From there, we move into dealing with bubbles in resin prints. It's a very common problem if you don't have your resin printer set up correctly. Bubbles can ruin prints or cause a lot of excess work. From there, we move into an individual who is having a trouble getting beautiful things out of his bed, but he's also washing it down the drain. That's a Grant rant. After that, we talk about printing with resin in small spaces. There are ways around it. You just got to be a little creative. And finally, we end off with a Lulzbot Mini 2. It's got some extrusion problems. But you know what doesn't have extrusion problems? Our sponsor, 3D Musketeers. If you are tired of failing at prints and you just want the experts to handle it, or you don't even want to bother trying, hit up the experts over at 3D Musketeers. We now have over 40 3D printers helping people just like you make parts every single day. I've got a problem with buying printers. Worth it. But everything from your small individual pieces to massive runs of multiple thousands of pieces, the experts here at 3D Musketeers can help you get your prints rolling on machines like the ones you see right behind me in a lot of these videos. We understand that maybe you do want to struggle and learn. That's how we all kind of learn one way or another, but you might want to kick a couple of bucks to help us out and do what we do here. You can do that by joining our Patreon. Links, of course, will be in that description down below. And at the $10 tier and higher, you can come hang out with myself and all the other Musketeers in our Discord server, where we are also talking about development of The Politician. We've had some things come up, and we might be doing some custom machining for this. I'm a little excited. I'm also a little bit scared because, oh boy, that might be expensive. But it's the right move for a product like this. And being a part of that Discord server gets you access to what's happening with that project. So if you are dealing with issues with temperatures in your resin printers, or in your FDM printers, because, you know, it can get hot enough to do that, go join our Discord. We can talk all about it. But we do understand that people can be cash-strapped these days. I know we are here. Things have been tight. But, hey, a like is free, a subscribe is free, and a share costs you nothing but a couple of seconds of your time and helps our channel reach more audiences. So maybe we get even more interesting fails and come up with more interesting video topics. Thank you guys for all of your support through all of this. We're going to keep doing these because I do love them. But let's get back into fixing those fails. Destroyed my nozzle. Yep. Let's see what we've got to say here. It says, hi, I didn't realize nozzles were counter-threaded. They're not. Broke the old nozzle in two, leaving part of it in the metal housing. Yep, there's a problem. Right there, there's a problem. All right. There's kind of two schools of thought. The school of thought that says, just use an easy out, basically drill it out, you'll be fine. And the other school of thought, which is mine, is replace the damn thing. It's not even worth trying to fix it. Buy a new block, buy a new nozzle. Quite frankly, if you got the spare cash, new heater cartridge and thermistor, because they're likely going to be stuck in there too. The thing with printers is that the blocks are made of aluminum from factory generally. And that means that they're very, very, very soft. And even a brass nozzle can overcome those threads and cause it to strip out. But if you're trying to do it when the printer is cold, it's not gonna work. you're going to break your nozzle. Trust me, trust this user, and trust your own experience if you've had it happen to you. You always got to work on nozzles, blocks, and all of that when the printer is hot, unless you're using a hot end that is designed to not do it when things are hot, like the E3D Revo system. This is not that. It is a volcano of sorts, probably a clone. Let's just be real with it, honestly. There's no easy way to get this thing out, if you will. Some people say use the easy out, but you will still have to torch that hot end or heat it up and hope you don't break anything else. But we've got some other issues here. The user is having some issues with identifying the components. He said, the heater, is that the rather brass cylinder thing next to the nozzle in the same block with the wires coming out? I molested that thing heavily, thinking it was a hex bolt to unscrew. Please don't do that. Be very, very careful about just randomly sticking Allen keys into parts of your printer, especially the heater. Your heater is one of the higher amperage things on your machine, unless you do have a pretty beefy heated bed. And there's a lot of current passing through that, which will almost certainly fry a MOSFET if it's shorted out. Heaters are designed to be big resistors, create heat. That's part of their deal. But if you short across them, the controlling circuitry can a lot of times, breathe out its last puff of magic smoke. And as any of you that have worked in the electronics industry or played around enough have found out, once the magic smoke comes out, there is no getting it back in without replacing the pieces that have a new portion of magic smoke. There's actual people out there that believe that. But in this case, I have a feeling they weren't taking into account that everything is done upside down. And you have to think about what you're looking at upside down, right? To tighten, you turn this way, which might seem like you're unscrewing from looking at the printer. And you go through those steps, eventually become second nature, and you don't deal with this anymore. Thankfully, nozzles, blocks, the works are cheap, and this would be a good time to upgrade to official components from E3D, which are, of course, a little bit more expensive, but the quality of the machining is just better, period. It's just better. So what can be done here to cause this from happening in the future? Well, one, make sure that printer is nice and toasty when you go to change out the nozzle or doing any work on the hot end in general. Two, if it's not coming out, don't try to force it. You might need more heat, you might need less heat, you might need to cool down the nozzle rapidly. Sometimes they can get welded together. And then three, have spare parts, because if you had spare parts, this wouldn't really be much of an issue. And then realistically, four, subscribe to this channel, because we do talk about a lot of things about the anatomy of hot ends, about printers themselves, and maybe this is an impetus for me to do a video on the anatomy of a 3D printer. Let me know if you guys want to see that in the comments below. We're just kind of talk about a printer. No adhesion to supports. Let's take a look at this. What the hell kind of support? What am I looking at? Quite frankly, with this little support that's on here, I'm surprised this looks as good as it does. We can see the settings a little bit lower. They're using Cura, PLA, 0.4 nozzle. Layer height is 0.4. We're going to get to that. Tree supports, which I don't think are working. Touching build plate only, fine. Zigzag, fine. Everything else here is fine. 0.4 millimeters with a 0.4 nozzle. While it's not technically impossible, it's not correct. Basically, if you run a 0.4, don't go above like a 0.3, 0.35, and don't go below a 0.07 unless you really hate yourself. You can technically go lower, but it is going to be a disaster of a time. Small layers take a long time. Looking at this, I don't see tree supports. There are no supports here. I don't see supports. Here, I guess there's a little bit of a tree support sticking up there, but I'm not seeing that there's enough support. This model should not have these big blocks on the bottom of it. And if that's all that's on the bottom, look at reorienting your model so it makes a little bit more sense to 3D print from the perspective of what you're doing. We have to take a look at it from a broad spectrum analysis and say, should this part be printed this way? I don't know, but I can tell you that is not an ideal alignment. This should not be your bottom surface. I don't care how good your supports are, unless you're really using soluble, you're not going to get a beautiful bottom layer. Now, you can get good bottom layers. In fact, the Prusa's do a pretty good job, and oddly, the Snapmaker has been surprising me. But reorienting the print so that there's less support material needed might also have a massive benefit for what you're doing. So take a look and see if that's possible. If it is, go ahead and make that shift. So again, to recap, cut down that layer height 0.3 max, especially if you're newer at this. I'm not really all that read up on tree supports, so I don't really know the right settings for it, so I'm sorry. If Prusa does decide to add it like we talked about in Wednesday's video, which we'll card to right here, we looked at 2.5 Alpha 3 from Prusa, then I will compare it. But right now, it's not that fair because even though both Cura and Prusa are running the Arachne engine now, it's still not an apples to apples comparison. And when you are running thick layers like this, you might want to turn up your temps. You can run thicker layers, but you either got to cut down your speed or you got to increase your temps, or both, because you need to make sure that filament is getting adequate heat before it's being extruded through the nozzle. We know this is a thing because we've been messing around with the diamond nozzles a lot. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, yeah, you can get nozzles made of diamond. In fact, I happen to have some here, courtesy Champion X. They actually sent these over after our first video on the nozzles. You can see they're literally polished. And the tips, as well as quite a bit of the inside, made of polycrystalline diamond. And according to the staff there, it's 0.15 carats of diamond, which is kind of cool, honestly. We actually interviewed some of the core team from the Diamondback group and Champion X. Card to that video so you guys can take a look if you want to learn more about the nozzles. But these nozzles, because they're diamond, transfer heat so much better that I'm literally running PETG behind me at 215 degrees centigrade, which is kind of insane because normally you run it at like 240 to 250. Nope. 215. It's happy. So your nozzle chemistry can have a big impact on this as well. These are brass nozzles, so not too much to worry about there, but something to keep in mind. We can also look at the model orientation. There's no good way. What is the bottom piece of this? Let's see what we got. They're trying to print this file from printables. Oh, these are alignments for the rails. You don't need those. There's not really a good way to orient these parts. They've got this bottom geometry, and that's used for alignment to make sure that you're kind of aligned on the printer itself. I don't think that's needed. I honestly don't think it's needed. You should be able to take those off because you are bolting it directly to the printer. And if you're going to bolt it to the printer, you don't need any of these alignment jigs. It should self-align. I don't know why they're there, and I don't think tree supports is the right support for this. I don't think they're gonna have enough time to propagate the way that you would want. A regular support structure would be fine, but there really isn't a good way to print these. And we can see Thingiverse, then we can see a Remix, and they added a little bit more space so that the bars could fit inside and slide into the printer. I don't think that's necessary, but that's my personal opinion. In a case like this, orientation is going to eat you alive, and there are other ways you could orient it, but I think they all kind of possess the same problems, which are no matter how you skin this cat, there's really no way that you don't have problems with your bottom layers without using a regular style of support that will provide more hold power to the bottom layers of your print. Kind of a pain in the ass. There's really not a good way to do it. Bubbles in final print layers. Let's take a look at this. Anyone know bubbles might appear in the last few layers of a print? They're printing Lego accessories. Let's take a closer look. Yep, those are air bubbles. That, I believe, is layer off time. They're saying they're new to Reddit, so I don't usually make posts. They've been printing about 2 years making Lego scale accessories like this helmet in the above picture. They often get bubbles in the final layers of the print, and it drives them insane. They shake the resin, let it sit before starting the print. They stir the vats at the beginning of each production day. It happens with different resins, not just the white ones. If you know any solutions for eliminating bubbles that appear on so many of these prints, please let me know. Mr. Chris Catlett, who did send this one to us, so thank you, sir. And remember, we do need your help finding fails, so if you do want to help us out, make sure to tag us on the social medias, use the hashtag PrintFix, that way we can find them. Or if you're one of our patrons over at patreon.com/3D Musketeers, the $10 tier and higher, you can just send them to us directly in the PrintFixFriday channel in our Discord. It's pretty cool. The light off delay of 0.5 seconds is a little bit low. And I agree with Chris here that bumping it up to 1 second might give them a little bit more time for that resin to settle. What's happening is during that peel force, you're causing a little bit of cavitation on the raw resin itself, creating tiny bubbles. And fortunately, you gotta wait for those things to work their way out. That can take some time. It's okay, it's normal. A little bit of light off delay goes a long way. And I agree with this user here. There's a program called UV Tools. You can open your sliced file in it, and then you can look for printability issues like islands, resin traps, empty layers, etc. You can also auto-fix all of those. You can also change any printing parameters. So if you like the way everything is done there and you don't have the file saved in a way that you could edit it, you can just edit it inside of UV tools. It's pretty cool. And while, yes, this will add a little bit of extra time to your prints, I'd rather have prints that succeed than ones I have to run twice. Just saying. Can't get this beauty off the bed. Any tips? I mean, normally not getting beauties out of bed is a pretty good thing in my book, but I get it, so I'll be serious about it. First thing, resin is toxic. Second thing, resin is toxic to basically everything. So don't do this near a sink. Wear some gloves. Don't be an idiot. Now, it does look like they might have already washed this, and I hope they didn't wash it in their sink. But there are some different ways to do it. Of course, you can go the hack and slash method, use some razor blades to get underneath, but be careful of your delicate fingies, because you're liable to slip and cut yourself. But, you know, honestly, flex plates probably the best way to do it. Just gonna be honest with you, flex plates are the win here with this kind of thing. And I do like that we've got a great copy pasta from a user here. Hey OP, glad to see you join the community. Just a quick friendly reminder, water washable resin does not mean flushable. I like that. That's a great way to say it. Please do not rinse your prints in the sink and do not flush the water used to rinse down the drain. Always dispose of it safely or put it in the sun to evaporate. Enjoy. A+ for that. That is what we need to be telling people. I know that, you know, we kind of turned resin is toxic into a meme, and unfortunately it's turned into a bit of a meme. People don't believe it, and it bothers me. So if we start kind of talking about the fact that it's not flushable, yes, you can wash it in water. It's better to wash it with chemicals other than water, but whatever. But it's not safe to go down the drain. Just be very careful about that. And unfortunately, they did. This is the problem, guys. All right, don't put resin down your fucking drain. It's not about your pipes. I don't give a damn about your pipes. I care about what is at the end of your damn pipes. Whether that's a water treatment facility that then filters the water, puts it back into a drinking supply that may not actually be safe-ish. It's probably well diluted, but you get my point. And unfortunately, they don't get it because nobody reads the fucking MSDS for resin. It's really dangerous. Seriously, we talked about this in our resin rundown. We'll card to it. I agree that there should be some sort of driver's license for resin printers, but this is what happens when you have a suicidal race to the bottom for price. The necessary safety precautions that need to exist don't. And the reason that happens is because people are so concerned about getting it cheap, they don't give a damn about the potential worries. And the companies are so worried about making sales numbers because they're cutting them out so cheaply that they have to play an economies of scale game. They're not taking the adequate time that they should do or minimally need to do to make sure that the average user is educated and knows what the hell they're actually doing. I understand that you guys like the Grant rants, and they're fun, but this is one that I'm really tired of getting mad about. I don't know what more I can do as a relatively small creator in this industry to try to push this narrative. Resin is toxic. It's going to be toxic. And unless we come up with a resin that I can literally drink, it's going to be toxic. You need to treat it appropriately. Please. If not for you, for the earth. I'm done here. Some of you should keep your resin printer in a shed outside your garage or a separate room in the ventilation system. Me in my 30-meter square apartment. I feel you, and I do tell people all the time, put it in a garage, put it in a spare room, put it somewhere with ventilation. It's not always a thing. You need to somehow vent the fumes. If you can't vent the fumes, you got to have a way to treat your air, which means a VOC filter. Now, a lot of bathrooms, at least here in Florida, and I'm sure in other humid areas, have ventilation fans. That's to deal with getting the humid air out when you take a shower. You can actually pipe right into that. If you run a resin printer and run a duct that goes into your vent for your bathroom vent, that is considered ventilation. But even here in this photo, I could see an easy way that you could hang a pipe right out your window, like a air conditioning duct, with a little computer fan that would suck the fumes outside. Still not technically nice because you're putting those nasty fumes out in the atmosphere, but of course, it's diluted heavily, so it's not too big of a risk. Realistically speaking, we don't really know the dangers when we can smell the resin. Now, I'm sure my chemistry buddies might have a better idea, but I don't have chemistry degrees. What I can tell you is it don't smell good, which means I don't want it around me. Here at 3D Musketeers, we actually have whole room VOC filters that anytime I'm resin printing, I will turn them on about an hour prior to starting the prints, and I will leave them on about 6 or 7 hours afterward to make sure the room is properly filtered. Resin can basically go anywhere. Resin can be outside in my garage as long as it's reasonably temperature controlled, maybe with a politician. If you guys are wondering about that, go back and listen to the sponsor segue. I talk about it. But we can use something like the politician to keep consistent temperatures in there. It does have a carbon filter, so it might filter out some of the smell. Your mileage may vary, not making any claims there. But if I can put it somewhere, and even if my temps are high, let's say I keep it to 40°C in the chamber, I'm still keeping it consistent, which is important when you're not running it inside of an air-conditioned environment. I get that it's a pain. I get you don't like it, but you do have to take proper precautions to keep yourself safe. And if you're unwilling to do that, maybe, just maybe, you should just outsource your printing until you do have the opportunity, the availability, or the room to do it right. 3D print failing mid-print. It's from the Lulzbot subreddit. And this is a classic example of heat creep. They're saying they have a Lulzbot Mini 2 that keeps failing mid-print. They're using Cura 3.6.37 that is provided by Lulzbot, and it's up to date. You don't have to use Lulzbot Cura. It is so out of date. Please don't use Lulzbot Cura. The firmware of the printer is 2.0.9. The print fails seem to happen as the system is clogging up somehow, whether it's jamming or whatever it might be. They're using the stock nozzle of 0.5 with a 2.85 millimeter filament, and it is pushed plastic, which we actually used recently in our Twi'lek pot video. We'll have it on screen here, but this is heat creep. Like, it feels like heat creep. It looks like heat creep. I don't know if it smells like heat creep, but it's probably heat creep. It could also be that these little tiny movements are work hardening the filament. It's not common for pure PLA to have this happen, but it's not impossible. The 0.5 millimeter nozzle should solve this problem, because that is what Lulzbots come with stock, by the way. Just change it to a 0.4 so it's consistent with all your other machines. But this does look like quintessential heat creep to me. It slowly starts as what looks like a jam, because what's happening is the filament is expanding in the heat break or in the heat sink, and basically creating too much friction that your extruder cannot power through. You could look at increasing your extruder pressure, try to push through it, but I think it would be better to look at making sure that the cooling duct for your heat sink being this, now it's a hexagon on these, so it's a little bit different, but make sure that your cooling fan is blowing over those fins. If you are worried about heat creep, you can check by just touching the heat sink during the print. Make sure not to touch the block. It's really friggin' hot. And if the sink feels warm to the touch, that is a problem, and you will want to make sure that your fans are running adequately. On these older machines, like we have a Taz 6 that I have to do it often on, and I'm sure you need to do it on your Lulzbot as well. Make sure that your fans, the fan duct, and the heat sinks are free of any dust and debris. That dust is an insulator that keeps the air that's flowing over it from really getting to that aluminum heat sink, not allowing it to get rid of that heat into the air. All things to look out for. Otherwise, this is pretty consistent. I might look at upping it to 210°C, but with the fact that it's failing at different areas, I'm gonna go with heat creep, but it might be work hardening, because of course, when you think about it, 2.85 millimeter filament being larger in diameter, it means that the stepper motor moves less for the same extrusion that you would get out of a 1.75 millimeter diameter filament, right? Think about it. There's more plastic there, more surface area. I don't know if maybe on those small movements, we're doing a lot of retracts and detracts that might cause it to gain a little bit of extra wear where they weren't expecting it. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for you today. Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Did I do good? I think I might have gotten one or two of these wrong. I'd love to know your opinion on that down in the comments below. But stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. If you're having bubble problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems, but light off time between layers is not one. Hit me. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video, and a massive thank you goes out to all of our Patreon and YouTube channel member supporters. Remember, if you want your name scrolling right next to me in these end credits, head over to our Patreon and join the $5 tier higher so you can come hang out with these elite group of Musketeers. Right below me will be the entire Print Fix Friday series, and next to that will be our resin material rundown video. It's an old one, probably due for a bit of an upgrade. Let me know what you think. I'll see you all down in those comments, and in the next one, take care.